Hello, I hope you have been able to install SmartGit and have pulled the previous example problems which we had given and are comfortable in loading the code which we are sharing into your IDE. In this video, we'll be seeing how we can probably get input from the user. We should also realize that this is one of the many ways by which we are going to learn how to get the input from the user, and this is probably one of the oldest ways by which input is being got from a user, and in all probability you will never be using this method when you are developing a solution where many people are going to work with you. So we are going to introduce a few new concepts, like the different ways you can get the data and also probably some of the ways you can present the data. Now let us, this is the code which I had, which I'm planning to work with you, and without any delay, let me go ahead. So as seen in the previous video, you should be able to understand how to probably create a project. So we have created a project, and inside the project I have created one more folder where I'm going to write this code. So if you see here, we are going to use the source folder. Inside the source folder, we are having the class file get input from the user.java. So this is one part which we have already probably done. Now to start off with the project, we should ensure that the class which we are writing has the same name as the class file which you are going to write your class in. Get input from the user, no space should be there, and so we've got the class name as it is given there. Now the entry point of any class is the main method. So again, for now I'm not going to explain what public and static keywords are, but void means the function or method main is not going to return a value. So this is going to be a string array of arguments. So args is the name of the variable essentially, and this is a standard way by which almost all the Java coders work. So let me just get this curly bracket out of the way, and we got a few errors indicated, but that is because we don't have anything inside the same, right? So in case we are wanting to see what these errors are, you can just go and click this, and we've been told that it's a class is required. So I've forgotten the keyword class. So now that mistake is taken care of. Right. Now let us go on with the writing of the rest of the code. Now to get input from the user, we have to use a method called scanner. Scanner is a help function which helps to see whether an input is available in the buffer. So buffer is the place or temporary place where data is stored. So we will be scanning the input buffer for data. So there are some helpful files which have been written for doing this, so that people don't have to keep writing code for each platform essentially. So this is in a package called java.util. So this scanner class has been written in java.util package. So from that we are taking this scanner class. Class is a blueprint of data or objects essentially. So what we are going to do right here is we are going to create the scanner class. Now before I proceed, maybe let me just put this in the let me put it in the presentation mode. So this is going to make it look a little better. So you'll be able to see the contents, I hope, more clearly. Now coming here, we are going to create an object of the type scanner. This is a copy or a clone of what is there in scanner. So whatever scanner method can do, the object which we create is going to be able to do. So scanner is the data type, and we are going to create an object called input object. I call this input object because this is going to help us take inputs. So what is this input object? It is a new instance. It's a new instance of scanner, and we are going to assign to it a method called system.in. So what does the input object do? It does all the work which scanner can do. Whatever is the work which scanner can do is taken by our input object. In particular, it will do the input work. What is the input work? It scans the input buffer for data, and then it pushes the data, the variable from the buffer. It pushes the data in the buffer to a variable basically. So let us see how it does. Now let us get an integer. So I'm going to call this as int a, and this is going to be defined by us. So how is it done? So I need a variable called int a. This is of the data type integer. So we are telling the compiler essentially reserve a memory unit or a register of inside the memory for our variable. Call it int a. So let us go ahead. How do we get the input? We are going to get, we are going to take the value of whatever is there in the input buffer. So input, so I'm going to use the input object. I'm going to tell the input object to take whatever is the value in the input buffer and store it in input int a. So essentially, we are telling from the buffer, assign that whatever is in the buffer, assign that value to int a. So, and what is the type of data expected in the buffer? It is int a. And let us run this very quickly. So when we run this, so here we go. You will see that the program is there, and we don't really know what is happening over there. The reason is there's no message. So when I give 12, the 12 has got assigned to the integer a, and that's about it. So let's make it a little helpful. I'm going to introduce the print command. Earlier we had used the print line, if I'm not mistaken. So here we go. So how do we do something to the output? System.out is the method we are going to use, is the class we are going to use, and in that the method print is going to be specifically used by us. So this is going to print whatever is the argument which it has to the standard output device. Essentially, this is again going to push it to the buffer of the standard output device, and the standard output device will take it from that buffer and then again push it to the screen. Buffer is a temporary memory which is present inside our computer essentially. So now we can say enter and integer. I am very specific because next number which I am going to ask from the user is a floating point number. So now let us run this. When we run this, now we are going to have, in addition, we are not only just going to have this number, it is going to ask us some, it's going to give some meaningful output. So I am going to give 12. And again, because this space is there only, there is a space between this colon and this one. And again, there is no work which is done. So suppose I want to make it a little meaningful, I can say system.out print method again. The argument for the print is going to get printed. So the entered number is, and again here I am going to be able to do an operation called concatenation. So plus is the concatenation operator when it's string. It joins, concatenation is joins to strings end to end. Okay, and what I want to do, I want to print int a. Okay, so whatever is the value in int a, it is going to get printed. Now let's again run this, and it is going to be, yes, there is a problem over here. What is the problem? Why variable might not have been initialized. Okay, so the value of int a has not been initialized. So what I have not done, I'm sorry, the int a is initialized only in this step. So I used it even before the value was assigned. Okay, so initializing of variables is a very important step, and you can initialize a variable over here itself. However, you can otherwise do it as another step, like what we've done here in line number 7. So now that error is gone. So if you are looking at, if the program is not running, please try to see why the program is not running. This is a very important thing which you need to understand. Okay. Now let's run this again. Let's see what happens now. So I'm going to run this, and yeah. So now it's going to be enter an integer. Let us say 10. Entered number is 10. This is looking more decent. Now we have seen how we can assign get a value and go ahead with it. Like do some operations. So you can do a lot of things. You can say, for example, multiply it with by 2, okay, or divide by something, so on and so forth. Now let's get a floating point number. So again, we don't have to again create a scanner class, but I can reuse it, but I need to use a floating point number. Now what we're going to do, we are going to say enter a floating point number. Essentially, we don't know whether a person knows whether what a floating point is, because it's quite technical. So or yeah, enter a fraction. Even fraction is going to be difficult. Let me just keep it at floating point for now. So we can now get a floating point number, but you should be careful here. This variable is only going to take, for example, integer. So to make it store a float, you need to call it as float. And you should always remember that once you initialize a variable of a data type, you cannot make it into another one. And my convention is to put int for prefix the variable with the int, so that I know what data type that variable is going to take up. Now let us change all the things and run. I'm going to now run this program, and there is an error in this, but I just want to showcase what happens in that case also. So now let's give 12, and there's one more thing. If you see here, it's looking very clumsy because enter a floating point number almost comes immediately. So if I want to what you call as create a space, I should give what is called as a new line character. So that is nothing but I have to tell the computer, please press an enter key. If I press an enter key, the text goes to the next line. Now that is not desirable. So we use what is called as an escape sequence. Escape sequences are a set of key combinations or character combinations which are there, which when is parsed, that is when each of this character which is there is taken by the compiler, it will see that there is whenever this backstroke n is there, it will make it into a it will convert it into the equivalent of the enter key. Okay, so now let me give a floating point and give an enter key. Now there is an error. If you see, the problem is the compiler is expecting an integer from the input buffer, but then it is floating point number has gone. So you will find that input type mismatch is the first thing, first error condition which it has encountered. So then it creates a breakpoint, and you should be able to also see on which line this error is being thrown at. Okay, so if you see here, it is saying on line number 12. So you look at this, on line number 12 there is a mistake. So don't get worried when there is an error message coming. Read it and try to interpret it. So here I see the error is input mismatch. So I instead of getting a integer, it got a floating point number. So it got a little alarm, stopped every exception, and then it throws an error, and then it tells us that it is in the function or the method get input from the user dot main, and on line number 12. So now we have corrected it. So let's run this. Again, it's going to compile and it's going to run. So here it goes. So again it says first is enter an integer. I give 12. I give a floating point number 3.14, which is nothing but your value of pi, and the output is done. So we have now seen a couple of things. For example, we introduced the concept of escape characters. We have introduced the floating point number. We have introduced probably the scanner class over here. So all of these things are probably the new things which are done till now. I am going to introduce one more concept, the formatted string. So formatted string is going to make things like this one easier for readability. So there is a problem here. It is quite difficult for me to keep seeing that plus, plus, so on and so forth. So wouldn't it be nice if I'm going to be able to give this int a directly over here and also this new line character. Now to do this, we'll have to use what is called as the printf or the print formatted string. What printf does is it takes the format string, which is essentially like a constant for it, and it has some special characters which we call as placeholders. So for example, to get an integer, I'll do %d, and what it will do is it will have a set of arguments which it will replace into the placeholders. Okay, now we have now removed all the other things which are not directly related, and the compiler essentially is going to replace this %d, which is a special symbol, with the first variable which is there, right? So this is called formatted string. Okay, so you can do a lot of stuff with the formatted string. Essentially, we can just look at this and know that a new variable is going to be replaced here, and it's going to be decimal or integer type, and it is going to have a new line character after this. Now let us run this bit of code and see. You'll find that the same output is got for line 8 and line number 9. Okay, there is a illegal character. What has happened here? This has to be closed in quote. Somehow the quote mark escaped, so that is why on line number 8 error is there. Now let's run this, and here we go. So enter an integer. Let's enter 10. Then it is yes. Now this is what I wanted to show you. Look at line number 8. Look at line number 9. The output is just the same. However, the way we have written is different. So concatenation essentially involves adding a lot of data, and I leave it to your convenience. But format string is more fun, and I'll introduce the good fun later on. Right, now let's go ahead here, 3.14, and then the floating point number gets printed. Now all looks good, and what I'm going to do is, since I personally prefer the format string, I'm going to replace over here also with the format string, and now my code is complete. Right, so there is an error according to this guy. What is the error which is there? System.yes, float, everything looks good. Next float, but still error is shown. What can be the error? Now let me again go here, because this just-in-time compilation is really good. So it's got yeah, it seems to have some problem. No, I don't want it to go off. Cannot resolve. Method print java.long string and float, because print method doesn't take arguments in this particular manner. So now it is going to be fine, and now that problem is resolved. Now let's run this code. No, I'm not going to run this code. I'm going to show you how we can get a string. Strings are going to be a little different, because we are not going to use the what we call as the basic data types which is there in Python, right? So these are called the primitive data types, and I'm going to use what is called as a wrapper class. So don't worry about wrapper class immediately if you're not able to get it. we will be working on it a little. We'll be working on it. So let's say that instead of saying enter a string, I'll say enter your name. Right now we have entered the name, and here this initialization will not work because string A will not really take. Although you can do that, I'd rather not do the initialization over here. So string data can take also decimal data. Anyway, now coming back here, I'm going to say string A is equal to next. Here what we should do, we should just say next. So whatever is in the buffer, it is going to be put in over here. Now when we look at this output, so here again let's make it a little meaningful. So I can say your name is, right? I can just put your name is, and over here the format string, the placeholder is percentages. In other words, compiler, please note a string variable is going to come and sit in this location. And what should I do? I should keep str over here. So now all good. And let's so when I say all good, it means that I don't see any wiggly lines over here. And even now there are two variables, so it's saying that these two what you call as the initialization is redundant. But anyway, that we can eliminate if we desire. So that's what is done over here. So I can remove this. Okay, if I remove this, I'm going to find that one of the errors is gone. And again over here, I'm doing this, removing this initialization. Okay, now let's run this program, and as usual we are going to get enter an integer 12. Then let's go ahead with the same pi, and you can give your name, and I'm going to give it as JSP. Now watch this. Here the floating point number looks a little awkward because there are too many zeros in the back. So we can do the good part of this floating point number is I can just do something like 0.3f. So it will eliminate the zeros. It will only keep 3 decimal places over there. Now let me probably do one thing over here. We can mix a lot of the output and get some different output also. So I'm a little lazy, so let me just copy the string over here. So I can do this. Hi, instead of name, I'll come here and put the percentages. Go to the new line. Okay, you entered. I can give it like this. You entered the integer. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give the percentage d over here because that's the integer which I received, and the float percentage f. Okay, so now I've given two placeholders. And I'm sorry, I've got 3 placeholders and there's only one variable. If I run this, it will definitely show an error. So I won't be surprised if that is a warning. Too few arguments for format string. So found 1, expected 3. So let us give the other 2 so that our compiler will stop complaining. And over here, float a. So the same sequence, it will get filled up. Suppose you interchange this, you will get an error because you cannot fit in a floating point number inside an integer. So all of those things, I'll suggest that you can just try it out by yourself and check it out. So now let us run this bit of code, and here we go. So it's compiling the same. So enter the integer. Let me just raise this up a little. Okay, let's see. So enter an integer. I'm going to enter the integer 10. The floating point number, say, let us just put as 2.5. Now I'm going to enter my name JSP, and again I don't want 2.5 to be there. So what I can do, let me change this code a little bit. I'm just going to modify the code a little. In modifying this code, you will find that you will be able to make that look a little different. Watch it. Now I'm just going to give point. So there are actually 6 or 7 decimal after the there are 6 numbers after the decimal place. This is the default way by which it prints. I'm just making it as 3 decimals after the floating point, right? So 3 decimals after the floating point. Let's run this code. When we run this code, okay, it's asking for an integer. Let's give 12, and if you give any other thing, it will throw an error. So 3.2, and I'm giving the name JSP. Now watch what happens. The floating point number has changed. Okay, so this is one of the many things which the format string helps you to achieve. See, for example, if I want my name to be within the quote marks, if I just put quote marks, this is going to give an error. This will give an error because you can't have a quote mark within a double quote within another string. Escape characters come to the rescue. Escape characters again come to our rescue. So when I give this backslash quote double quote, the Java interpreter is going to replace this combination stroke double quote with double quote. Okay, and there seems to be, oh sorry, this is not forward slash, it should be the backslash. Okay, so backslash. So now everything is good. Now let us run this program. Here you will now see hi JSP is within different within quote marks, right? So this is another use of the format strings, okay, or escape characters. It's not exactly, it works in the other types also, so I can't say for the format string. It is another advantage of, or this is one of the things which the escape characters do. Watch JSP. JSP is now within double quote, right? So we've seen a few concepts. We have seen how to get integer, string, and floating point numbers. We have also seen a few other things like how we can get we can concatenate strings or combine or join strings end to end. We also saw how we can replace it with a formatted string. So these are probably some of the concepts which we saw over here. And a format string is nothing but a template which we can write. And into that template, wherever there is a gap, you can fill it with the required variables. And I hope you found this useful. You will find that the format string is a very, very powerful way of interacting with the terminal. Now, the terminal is not the end of all. Scanner function is a very powerful function. You can take input from quite a lot of input devices, and as we go on, you will find that we'll be building on the knowledge which you have gained in this video. And I really hope that we'll be able to use JavaFX or something where you'll be able to create windowed functions rather than this terminal based functions or terminal based methods. So in the next video, we will see a little bit of the primitive data types or the data types which Java handles. So till then, bye.